Liam adjusted the straps of his utility belt as he stepped off the human transport shuttle and onto the floating city of Cirrus. The planet's sky shimmered with 3 suns, casting golden light over the tall, spiraling towers that hovered over deep blue oceans. It was his first time here, and as an engineer representing the United Earth Federation, he was excited to see the advanced technology of the Xyrans up close. The Xyrans were humanoid but taller, with delicate features and skin that glowed faintly under sunlight. Their cities floated above the ocean using advanced anti-gravity technology. Liam had heard stories about how Xyrans followed strict traditions, but he never expected that one small mistake would change his life forever. As he walked through the city's marketplace, taking in the sight of hovering platforms and translucent bridges, a sudden explosion rocked the area. A high-pitched alarm blared through the air as people screamed and scattered. One of the floating platforms above had been hit by something. Maybe a malfunction, maybe sabotage. Whatever the reason, it was now collapsing, and people were trapped. Without thinking, Liam ran toward the disaster. His training as an engineer kicked in. He knew how to reinforce unstable structures, how to find weak points, how to keep a platform steady for just a few extra seconds. That's all the time the trapped civilians needed to escape. Above him, a young Xyran woman struggled to hold onto the edge of the crumbling platform. She had long silver hair and striking violet eyes, filled with panic. She tried to pull herself up, but the surface beneath her was breaking apart. If she fell, she would drop hundreds of feet into the rough ocean waves below. Liam didn't hesitate. He leaped onto a lower platform, reached up, and grabbed her hand firmly. "Hold on," he shouted. The moment his skin touched hers, her eyes widened in pure shock. She gasped, as if something unthinkable had just happened. But Liam didn't notice. He was too focused on pulling her to safety. With one strong tug, he lifted her over the ledge and onto solid ground. She collapsed, breathing hard, staring at him with an unreadable expression. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, checking for injuries. The woman didn't respond immediately. She just kept staring at him. Then, suddenly, she jumped to her feet and took a step back. Her face had turned a deep shade of red. You touched my hand," she whispered, almost breathless. Liam blinked in confusion. "Yeah, I had to. You were about to fall." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, looking around as if searching for someone. Then, without another word, she turned and ran. Liam frowned. That was a strange reaction. He had expected gratitude, maybe a simple thank you. Instead, she looked almost alarmed. He shook his head and turned his attention back to the damaged platform. Emergency crews were arriving now, taking control of the situation. His job was done. As he walked back toward the main city square, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual had just happened. But he had no idea that, according to ancient Xyran customs, his life had just changed forever. Liam stretched his arms as he stepped out of the small guest quarters assigned to him in the Xyran capital. The events of the previous day still played in his mind. The explosion, the collapsing platform, and the strange reaction of the woman he had saved. He had expected gratitude, maybe even a conversation, but instead, she had run away as if she had seen a ghost. Shaking his head, he decided to push the thought aside. He had work to do. The United Earth Federation had sent him here to assist with technology exchange, not to dwell on strange cultural reactions. Just as he started walking toward the central hub of the city, 2 Xyran guards in silver armor stepped in front of him. Their expressions were serious, and their glowing violet eyes studied him carefully. "Human Liam," one of them said formally. "The Grand Council requests your presence immediately." Liam frowned. "The Grand Council? Why?" "You will understand soon. Please come with us." He hesitated. This felt strange, but refusing an invitation from the ruling body of an alien world wasn't exactly a smart move. With a sigh, he nodded. "All right. Lead the way." The council chamber was massive, shaped like a perfect dome with walls that shimmered with golden light. At the center, a long table stretched across the room, where high-ranking Exiran officials sat in elegant robes. Their expressions were unreadable, but Liam could feel the weight of their gazes on him. At the head of the table sat a woman he immediately recognized, the same woman he had saved yesterday. She was dressed in deep blue robes with intricate silver patterns, and a delicate crown rested on her head. Her violet eyes met his, and there was a strange mix of emotions in them: nervousness, confusion, and something else he couldn't place. One of the older council members cleared his throat and stood. "Liam of Earth," he said, his voice carrying authority, "do you understand the significance of what you have done?" Liam blinked. I saved someone from falling." Murmurs spread across the chamber, as if his words had surprised them. The council member sighed. "That someone is Princess Nira, heir to the Siren throne." Liam's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't realized she was royalty, but that still didn't explain why he was here. "I see. I'm glad I could help, but why am I standing in front of the Grand Council for this?" Another council member spoke up. "Because, by ancient Exiran law, your actions have created an unbreakable bond. In our culture, if one saves another in a life-threatening situation and physical contact is made, it is considered an act of ultimate commitment. By our traditions, this means you and Princess Nira are now bound in marriage." Liam's brain stopped working for a moment. He was sure he had misheard something. Wait, what? Princess Nira let out a small sigh and finally spoke. "It is true," she said, her voice calm but uncertain. "Our laws are clear. You touched my hand while saving me. That action is considered a sacred vow. By all traditions, you and I are now husband and wife." Liam felt like the floor had just vanished beneath him. "You're joking, right? This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know about your laws. I was just trying to help." The council members exchanged glances. The first one who had spoken shook his head. "Ignorance of tradition does not change its meaning. The bond has been formed." Liam rubbed his forehead. He had expected some challenges on this mission, but getting married to an alien princess by accident was definitely not on the list. He looked at Nira. "And what do you think about this?" She hesitated. "I do not know." Her fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. "This is unexpected for both of us. But I cannot ignore the law. The people will demand that we follow our traditions." Liam exhaled sharply. This was unreal. "So, what happens now?" One of the council members gave him a serious look. "Now we prepare for the official ceremony." Liam groaned internally. He had a feeling his peaceful assignment had just become a lot more complicated. Liam sat in a quiet chamber, staring at the smooth, glowing walls around him. His mind was still struggling to process what had just happened. One moment, he was an engineer on a simple diplomatic mission. The next, he was told he had accidentally married a princess. This couldn't be real. The door slid open with a soft hum, and Princess Nira stepped inside. She was dressed in a flowing silver robe, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she simply looked at him, as if studying his reaction. Liam exhaled. "So this is really happening?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. I don't understand," he admitted. "Back on Earth, marriage is a serious decision. It's based on love, trust, and choice. How can a simple act, just touching your hand, mean something so important?" Nira's violet eyes softened slightly. In Exiran culture, physical contact is not casual. It carries deep meaning. To touch someone in a moment of life and death is seen as the highest form of devotion. It means you are willing to risk everything for them. That is why this law exists. Liam rubbed the back of his neck. "I wasn't trying to make a vow. I was just saving a life." "I know," she admitted. "But to my people, intent does not matter. Action does." Liam shook his head in disbelief. "So, what do we do now?" Nara hesitated before answering. The council expects us to proceed with the traditional marriage ceremony. It will be a grand event, witnessed by all of Tiris. Liam gave a dry laugh. Great, a wedding with an entire planet watching. He looked at her seriously. And what do you want? Do you even agree with this? She lowered her gaze. I am bound by duty. As princess, I must respect our traditions. If I reject this bond, it could be seen as dishonor to my family. Liam sighed. So neither of us has a choice. Nira lifted her chin slightly. Not exactly. There is another option. Liam raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. There is an ancient trial, she explained. If we prove that our bond is unsuitable, the council might allow an exception. But the trial is difficult, and failure would mean complete acceptance of the marriage. Liam frowned. What kind of trial? She hesitated. It tests compatibility in 3 ways: strength, intelligence, and unity. We would have to pass all 3. Liam leaned back. And if we fail? She met his gaze. Then we remain married, permanently. Liam groaned and ran a hand through his hair. This just keeps getting better. Nira gave him a small, almost amused smile. You are handling this well, for a human. He smirked. Trust me, inside, I'm panicking. She tilted her head. Then why did you save me? Liam blinked. Because it was the right thing to do. A flicker of emotion crossed her face, something between admiration and curiosity. That, she said softly, is what makes humans so different. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Nira took a deep breath. We have little time. The council will soon demand an answer. Do we accept the bond, or take the trial? Liam exhaled. He had come here expecting a peaceful mission. Instead, he was faced with a choice that could change his entire future. And somehow, he knew, no matter what happened, his life would never be the same again. Liam stood at the balcony of the Siren Palace, gazing at the floating city below. The 3 suns of Tiris bathed everything in a warm golden glow, but inside his mind, a storm was raging. He was still trying to grasp the fact that he was now bound, by tradition, not choice, to Princess Nira. Behind him, the sound of soft footsteps caught his attention. He turned to see Nira approaching, her silver robes flowing like liquid metal. Her expression was calm, but he could sense the tension in her posture. The council has gathered, she said quietly. They are waiting for our decision. Liam let out a long breath. You really think this trial is the best option? It is the only option, she replied. If we succeed, we prove we are not meant to be together, and we will be released from the bond. If we fail, she paused, then the marriage will be permanent. Liam gave a wry smile. No pressure, ha. Before Nira could respond, a new voice interrupted. There is more at stake than your personal feelings. Liam turned to see an older Exiran man step onto the balcony. His long, flowing robes marked him as someone of high status. His silver hair was tied back, and his violet eyes held a sharp, calculating look. Nira stiffened. Counselor Varen. The man nodded at her before shifting his gaze to Liam. You are an outsider, a human. Do you understand how dangerous this situation is? Liam folded his arms. Dangerous. I saved someone's life. How is that a problem? Varen's expression remained cold. Because your actions have disrupted the balance of power. Princess Nira is not just a royal. She is the future ruler of Xeris. Her bond must strengthen our people, not create uncertainty. Your presence here is already controversial. Some believe this union is a mistake. Liam narrowed his eyes. And I'm guessing you're one of them. Varen's lips curled slightly. I am a protector of tradition. And tradition does not favor a human ruler. Nira stepped forward. Counselor Varen, the law is clear. The bond was formed. Whether you approve or not, Liam has the right to take the trial. Varen studied her for a long moment. You are correct, Princess, but do not mistake legal permission for acceptance. Many in the council will be watching, hoping for your failure. Liam clenched his fists. He had never asked for any of this, but now it felt like he was being thrown into a political game he didn't even understand. I don't care what they think, he said firmly. I just want to do the right thing. Varen raised an eyebrow. Then let us see if you can. With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the palace halls. Liam exhaled sharply and looked at Nira. So, not only do we have to take this trial, but we also have people hoping we fail. Nira nodded. It seems so. Liam shook his head. Great, just great. She gave him a small, almost amused smile. You are handling this well. He smirked. Trust me, inside. I'm panicking. Nira's expression softened slightly. Then let us not fail. Liam met her gaze, and for the first time, saw something more than duty in her eyes. There was determination, strength, and maybe, just maybe, a small trace of trust. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just about escaping a marriage. This was about proving himself, not just to Xeris, but to himself as well. And he wasn't about to back down. Liam stood in the grand ceremonial hall, feeling the weight of hundreds of Xeran eyes on him. The chamber was massive, with towering crystalline pillars that shimmered under the soft glow of floating lanterns. At the far end, the Grand Council sat in a semicircle, watching in silence. Among them was Councillor Varen, his expression unreadable. Beside Liam, Princess Nira stood tall, her silver robes flowing like water. Despite the tension in the room, she looked composed, every bit the royal heir she was. But Liam could sense the pressure she was under. This wasn't just a trial for him. It was a test of her honor as well. An elder Tyran, dressed in dark blue robes, stepped forward. He raised a staff, tapping it against the ground. The sound echoed across the chamber. The trial of the bond shall now begin, the elder announced. The bond between Princess Nira and Liam of Earth shall be tested through 3 challenges: strength, intelligence, and unity. Only by succeeding in all 3 can they prove the bond is unsuitable. If they fail even one, the union shall be made permanent. Liam swallowed. No pressure at all. The elder turned to them. Are you both prepared? Nira nodded. We are. Liam took a deep breath. Let's do this. The elder tapped his staff again. Then we begin with the first challenge. The trial of strength. The trial of strength. Liam and Nira were led to an open courtyard where a massive circular platform hovered in midair. The floor beneath it glowed faintly, controlled by Xeran anti-gravity technology. The audience gathered around, whispering among themselves. Nira turned to Liam. This trial is not just about physical power. It is about endurance and adaptability. Liam sighed. Good to know. So what do we have to do? A large door on the other side of the platform slid open with a deep hum. From the darkness, 2 mechanical constructs emerged. They were humanoid in shape but made of sleek metallic plates with glowing blue cores at their center. Their eyes flickered as they scanned their opponents. Liam groaned. Of course, combat robots. The elder's voice rang out. You must defeat the Guardians by working together. The challenge ends when both are disabled. Liam glanced at Nira. Any weaknesses? She pulled out a sleek, curved energy blade. They're cores, but they learn quickly. We cannot use the same attack twice. Liam rolled his shoulders. All right then, let's see what they've got. The moment the signal was given, the robots lunged forward. One shot toward Liam, at alarming speed. He barely had time to dodge as a metallic fist swung past him, hitting the platform with a loud clang. He stumbled but quickly recovered. The second robot charged at Nira, but she moved gracefully, sidestepping and slashing at its arm. Sparks flew as her blade cut through the metal. Liam's opponent didn't give him a break. It swung again, forcing him to duck. Thinking fast, he grabbed a loose panel from the platform and used it as a shield. The next punch hit the panel with a loud crash, sending vibrations up his arms. "Liam, the core," Nira shouted. Liam saw the glowing blue core in the robot's chest. Without thinking, he threw the metal panel at it like a disc. The panel struck the core, sending the robot stumbling backward. Nira took advantage of the distraction. She leaped forward, spinning in midair before slashing through the first robot's core. It sparked wildly before collapsing. Liam grinned. "Nice move." "Focus," she called, pointing at the second robot. It had already adapted. Instead of rushing them, it activated a pulse shield, making Nira's energy blade ineffective. Liam frowned. "All right, if blades won't work." He looked around and spotted a broken part of the floating platform's support beams. An idea formed in his mind. "Nira, can you distract it?" She nodded and dashed forward, forcing the robot to focus on her. Meanwhile, Liam sprinted to the support beam and yanked it free. The moment the robot turned toward him, he swung the heavy beam with all his strength. The impact sent the robot crashing backward, its shield flickering. Nira didn't waste the opening. With a swift motion, she deactivated her energy blade and instead drove the hilt directly into the robot's exposed core. With a final spark, the second robot collapsed. Silence fell over the courtyard. Then, the audience erupted into murmurs. Some looked surprised. Others, like Counselor Varen, seemed displeased. The elder stepped forward. "The first trial is complete. Strength has been proven." Liam exhaled. 1 down, 2 to go. Nira looked at him, and for the first time, gave him a small nod of approval. "You adapt quickly." He smirked. It's a human thing. But deep down, he knew the next trials wouldn't be this simple. And the real challenge was yet to come. Liam and Nira stood in a vast, circular chamber filled with floating crystal orbs, each glowing softly. The walls shimmered with ever-changing patterns, and a low hum filled the air. The audience watched from raised platforms, their eyes filled with curiosity and anticipation. In front of them, the elder raised his staff. "You have passed the trial of strength," he announced. "Now you must face the trial of intelligence." Liam glanced at Nira. "What exactly are we supposed to do here?" Nira's expression was calm but serious. "This trial tests mental ability, problem-solving, and logic. We must work together to solve a series of challenges before time runs out." Liam sighed. "All right. Puzzles. I can handle that." The elder continued. "You will have 3 puzzles to solve. Each will require a different skill. Memory, strategy, and reasoning. Fail to solve even one, and the trial ends." Liam straightened. "No pressure, then." The elder gestured toward the first puzzle. "Begin." The memory puzzle. A large, glowing grid appeared before them. Symbols flickered across it, some familiar, others alien. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Memorize the sequence. You will have 5 seconds." Liam's eyes widened. "Wait 5 seconds." Before he could complain further, the symbols lit up in a specific order. He barely had time to register them before the grid went dark. Nira spoke quickly. The sequence was star, spiral, triangle, twin moons, and... She hesitated. Liam's brain worked fast. He closed his eyes and replayed the pattern in his head. Then it hit him. Infinity symbol. That was the last one. Nira nodded. "Yes." She stepped forward and touched the symbols in the correct order. The grid glowed brightly, and the first challenge was complete. Liam let out a breath. 1 down. The elder nodded. "Proceed to the next puzzle." The strategy puzzle. A large 3-dimensional hologram appeared in the air. It showed a battlefield with miniature ships, structures, and soldiers. The instructions were simple. Defend your base while capturing the enemy stronghold. You have 5 moves. Liam scratched his head. "So, a strategy game." Nira studied the hologram. Yes, Hilarians use simulations like this for military training. Liam smirked. Good thing I played a lot of strategy games back on Earth. Nira raised an eyebrow. Games? Long story, he said. All right, let's do this. They had limited resources and needed to be careful. Nira focused on defending their base, while Liam looked for a weak spot in the enemy setup. After 3 moves, things looked uncertain. The enemy forces were advancing, and their own defenses were stretched thin. Liam narrowed his eyes. They're trying to bait us, but if we send troops here, he pointed at a narrow path on the map, we can flank them and take their base in 1 move. Nira considered it. Risky, but possible. They made the final move. The hologram flickered, then displayed a victory symbol. The audience murmured in surprise. The elder nodded. Second challenge complete. Proceed to the final puzzle. The reasoning puzzle. A massive stone tablet rose from the floor. On it, an inscription glowed in Exuran script. Nira read it aloud. 2 travelers come to a fork in the road. One path leads to safety, the other to danger. A guardian knows the way, but he always tells a lie. The other guardian always tells the truth. You may ask one question to find the safe path. What do you ask? Liam immediately grinned. Oh, I know this one. Nira looked at him, curious. You do? Yeah, we have a similar puzzle on Earth. He turned to the tablet. The question is simple. Which path would the other guardian tell me is safe? Nira's eyes widened slightly. That would always lead to the wrong path. Exactly, Liam said. So you take the opposite one. As soon as he said it, the tablet glowed. A low chime rang out, signaling success. The audience gasped in astonishment. The elder smiled. The 3rd challenge is complete. The trial of intelligence has been passed. Liam exhaled and turned to Nira. We did it. She looked at him, something unreadable in her expression. Yes, we did. The elder stepped forward. 2 trials have been conquered. Only one remains. Liam nodded, but inside, he knew the final test, the trial of unity, would be the hardest of all. Liam and Nira stood side by side in the grand ceremonial hall once again. The atmosphere was heavier this time. The final trial was about to begin, and they both knew it wouldn't be as simple as fighting machines or solving puzzles. Counselor Varen's sharp gaze was fixed on them, and Liam could feel the silent hope of the elder council, hope that they would fail. He clenched his fists. He didn't like being tested like this, but more than that, he didn't like the idea of losing. The elder raised his staff and spoke, his voice calm but firm. The 3rd and final test. The trial of unity. This challenge will determine whether Liam of Earth and Princess Nira are truly incompatible. Liam exchanged a glance with Nira. She looked as composed as ever, but he could see the tension in her eyes. What exactly do we have to do? Liam asked. The elder gestured toward the center of the chamber. The floor shifted, revealing a circular platform surrounded by a shimmering energy field. Within the field, a series of floating, glowing orbs hovered in random patterns. This is a test of trust, coordination, and connection, the elder explained. You must work as one. If you fail to act in harmony, the challenge will end. Nira took a slow breath. I understand. Liam nodded. All right, let's do this. The challenge begins. As they stepped onto the platform, the energy field around them pulsed. The floating orbs began to move in unpredictable patterns. Some glowed bright blue, while others flashed red. A deep voice echoed through the chamber. Collect the blue orbs. Avoid the red ones. Only by perfect balance can the trial be passed. Liam tensed. Sounds easy enough. The moment he spoke, the orbs started moving faster. Nira moved first, her motions smooth and precise. She reached for a blue orb, but as she did, a red one spun toward her path. Without thinking, Liam pulled her back just in time. She glanced at him. Quick reflexes. Liam smirked. It's a human thing. They quickly realized that neither of them could succeed alone. The orbs moved in ways that forced them to rely on each other. When Liam reached for one, Nira had to adjust their position to avoid a red one. When she moved forward, he had to cover her blind spots. It was like an intricate dance, one where even a single misstep could mean failure. As the trial continued, the orbs began shifting unpredictably, forming patterns meant to confuse them. Liam's instincts told him to react fast, but Nira was more methodical, studying the movements before acting. For a brief moment, they hesitated at the same time. A red orb nearly hit them. Nira spoke quickly. You react too fast. Think first. Liam frowned. And you think too much. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts. There was a pause. Then Nira exhaled. Then let us trust each other. Liam nodded. Agreed. They adjusted. Instead of working separately, they started moving in sync. Liam trusted Nira's calculations, and she relied on his reflexes. Together, they weaved through the chaotic patterns, collecting every blue orb without touching a single red one. The audience watched in stunned silence. Even Varen's expression darkened as the realization set in. Liam and Nira were succeeding. Finally, the last blue orb was collected. The glowing lights faded, and the energy field disappeared. The elder raised his staff. The trial of unity is complete. Liam let out a breath. That was intense. Nira looked at him, something shifting in her gaze. Yes, it was. The verdict. The council whispered among themselves as Liam and Nira stepped off the platform. Counselor Varen finally stood. You have passed all 3 trials, he said, though his voice carried no warmth. But this does not mean the bond is broken. Liam frowned. Wait, what? The elder looked at them. The purpose of these trials was to prove incompatibility, and yet you have shown that you can fight together, think together, and even move together in perfect harmony. Liam's stomach dropped. Are you saying? The elder nodded. By the laws of Cirrus, this means your bond is not unsuitable. The marriage remains. A heavy silence filled the chamber. Liam glanced at Nira. She met his gaze, but for once, even she seemed uncertain. This wasn't over. Not yet. And Liam had no idea what would happen next. Liam's mind raced as the elder's words echoed through the grand ceremonial hall. The marriage remains. He had expected relief, maybe even freedom, after the trials. Instead, he stood frozen, staring at the council members who had just declared that he and Nira were still bound together. The audience murmured in hushed voices. Some sirens looked pleased, while others, like Counselor Varen, wore displeased frowns. Liam turned to Nira, hoping to find some kind of reaction on her face. But as always, she remained calm, though her eyes held something he couldn't quite place. Before he could speak, Varen stepped forward. This is a mistake, he said sharply. A human cannot rule beside the princess. Our traditions must be upheld. The elder council exchanged glances, but did not respond. Liam exhaled. Look, I never wanted to cause problems. I only saved Nira because it was the right thing to do. I didn't know touching her hand meant marriage. Varen's eyes narrowed. And yet, here you stand, bound to our future queen. Nira finally spoke, her voice steady. The trials were fair, counselor. If we were truly incompatible, we would have failed. Varen clenched his jaw, but did not argue. The elder raised his staff. The law has spoken. But there is one last matter to settle. Liam's stomach twisted. There's more. The elder nodded. You both have a choice. The audience fell silent. Even Varen's expression shifted slightly. The elder continued. The bond is confirmed, but if either of you truly believes this union cannot work, you may challenge fate itself. The right of severance. Liam frowned. What's that? Nira answered this time. A final test. If we choose it, we must walk the path of truth. If we reach the end without faltering, the bond will be broken. Liam raised an eyebrow. Sounds simple. Nira shook her head. It is not. The path does not test strength or intelligence. It tests the heart. Many who enter do not make it to the end. Liam hesitated. He had faced combat robots, strategy puzzles, and trust challenges, but this was something different. He looked at Nira. What do you want to do? For the first time, she hesitated. Then, softly, she said, I do not know. That surprised him. Nira had always been sure, always had a plan. But now she seemed uncertain. Liam ran a hand through his hair. All right. I don't know either. But if we take this rite of severance, at least we'll have a choice. Nira nodded slowly. Then we will walk the path. The elder struck his staff against the ground. So be it. A bright golden light filled the chamber, and the floor beneath them began to shift. Liam braced himself. Whatever was coming next, it was going to change everything. And he wasn't sure if he was ready. A golden light surrounded Liam and Nira as the floor beneath them shimmered, transforming into a long, glowing pathway. It stretched forward into a vast, endless void, where nothing existed except the path itself. The grand ceremonial hall and the watching council members faded into the distance, leaving only the two of them standing side by side. Liam swallowed. So, this is the path of truth. Nira nodded, her voice calm but serious. Yes, this trial does not test our skills. It will show us what we truly feel, what is in our hearts. If we are not meant to be together, we will not make it to the end. Liam exhaled. And if we do? She hesitated. Then the bond remains, forever. The weight of her words settled between them. The path pulsed softly beneath their feet, urging them forward. Without any other option, they stepped ahead. The first truth, the doubts. As they walked, the golden light flickered, and suddenly, the air changed. Liam blinked as the void around them transformed into a memory, his own thoughts brought to life. He saw himself standing in the ceremonial hall, facing the council, hearing them declare that he was still bound to Nira. The scene replayed, but this time, he could hear his own mind whispering, I don't belong here. I never asked for this. I should go home. The memory froze, hanging in the air like a reflection of his deepest doubts. Liam clenched his fists. Is this what the path does? It shows us what we're afraid to admit. Nira nodded. It forces us to confront the truth. Liam looked at his own doubts, feeling the weight of them. Yes, he had thought about leaving. Yes, he had wanted to walk away from this. But was that truly what he wanted now? He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The memory shattered like glass, and the path continued. Nira watched him carefully, then stepped beside him. The second truth, the walls between them. The path shimmered again, and this time, it was Nira's truth that appeared. They were in the Siren Palace. Nira sat alone in her chambers, looking out at the city with a distant expression. Voices echoed around her, her people speaking in hushed tones. A Siren princess should not be bound to a human. She must protect our traditions. She will choose duty over love, as she always has. Liam turned to Nira, watching her face as she saw her own fears play out in front of them. You don't want this either, he said quietly. Nira exhaled. I have always done what is expected of me. I never questioned it, until now. Liam hesitated. So what do you want? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she lifted her chin and walked forward. The memory dissolved behind her, and Liam followed. The final truth, the choice. As they neared the end of the path, the golden light pulsed one last time. This time, there were no memories, no voices, only a single question that echoed in the space around them. Do you truly wish to part ways? Liam's heart pounded. He had spent so much time thinking about escaping this situation, about undoing the accidental bond. But standing here now, knowing what they had faced together, he wasn't sure anymore. He looked at Nera. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She had always been composed, always followed duty, but here, in this moment, something had changed. For the first time, it was her who reached out first, her fingers brushing against his hand. Liam swallowed. "So, do we walk away?" Nera's voice was barely above a whisper. "I do not think I want to." Liam exhaled, a small smile forming. "Me neither." The moment they both accepted it, the path of golden light flared brilliantly, surrounding them in warmth. The void melted away, and suddenly, they were back in the ceremonial hall. The council watched in silence. The elders studied them carefully before nodding. "You have completed the path of truth." Liam and Nera glanced at each other, and for the first time, neither looked uncertain. The bond was no longer an accident. It was a choice. And their story was just beginning.